Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Space for Life. We're going to have an amazing conversation today with a new friend, Erik Allen. And I am not going to spoil his story because I think his story is going to just be something that will be on the edge of our seats listening to. But today's episode is going to be a real episode about the story of surviving and thriving. And I think Erik's story will go way beyond just that context of surviving and thriving. And it's going to get into, well, once we kind of move out of that surviving mode, how do we continue to thrive well? How do we continue on a positive trajectory over the long haul? How do we sustain the good life? And so I think that's so important for, every one of us to hear. So I'm real excited for all that Erik has got to share with us. He is, amongst many, many things, he's the host of the Erik Allen Show, a phenomenal podcast that is a lot similar to what we do here at Space for Life, share a lot of stories of people who have survived and thrived and are living incredibly meaningful lives, and how do we learn from those stories? So Erik will get a chance to share a lot of that with us and what that podcast is all about. And Erik helps a lot of entrepreneurs and success-minded people in how they can continue that path. So we have a lot to learn from Erik. I'm so excited to have him as a guest on Space for Life. And welcome, Erik.
Man, thank you so much. Truly an honor to be on your show, man. I am a big fan of your show. I love what you're doing. And again, truly honored to be on here, man.
Well, it's fantastic. I'm really interested. I've read, but really not heard all of your story. And I know that some addiction is a piece of this. And my dad was a recovered alcoholic for, the last 46 years of his life. And we've had some amazing guests who have had stories along this line. So I'm just going to let you kind of dive in and tell whatever aspects of your story you'd like to. So yeah, I'm excited to hear.
Oh, come on. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I grew up in a small town, I would say medium-sized town in eastern Washington state. And I thought it was a typical household. I went to Sunday school with my mom and dad, and I played Little League. My dad would then take my best friend Dave and I and literally throw us in dumpsters on a Saturday morning and say, go find treasure. He'd go find the biggest stores in town and just toss us in there and say, go find treasure. And that was so much fun as a kid. And then when I was 11 years old, it was just fun to do that and do that. And then when I was 11 years old, my parents got divorced and wasn't sure why. I never saw them really argue that much. But my mom got together with a man who was almost almost right away became physically abusive. So emotionally abusive, physically abusive to her. I remember there was times where I'd be outside playing and I'd look through the back window into their bedroom and he'd be hitting with a cordless phone when those were around. And I would call the police and they would show up and my mom would never press charges. And I never understood that. And then they did the smart thing. They got pregnant and decided to move us in the middle of my 8th grade year from eastern Washington state to a very small town in Montana called Stevensville, Montana. It was population about 1,200 people at that time. And we were on the outskirts of town. They rented this house that was a beautiful property, 5 acres, huge 2 ponds, right by the Bitterroot River. But the problem was the house had 3 bedrooms. And it was one for them. It was one for my little brother's a few months old at this time, and then one for my sister who's 4 years younger than me. And they said, Erik, you can live in the garage. So I literally had this plastic tarp down the middle of the garage that separated my bed from the truck that would pull in. Luckily, my half of the garage had a fireplace in it that would keep me semi-warm in the middle of the winter -degree nights. But it got cold once that fire went out for sure. Once, 1, 2 a.m. when the fire went out, it was a pretty cold night. But there was a moment when I was about 13, 14 years old that really changed the trajectory of my life. So I was at home, brushed my teeth one night. They came home arguing. Wasn't anything different than any other night. But I remember as I was brushing my teeth, I felt God say, dude, you've got to look down this hall and see what's going on. And so the way the house was set up was from the bathroom, if I peeked out into the hallway, it was to the kitchen, to the pantry, to the garage door where my bedroom was at. As I peeked around the corner, I saw this man on top of my mom in the pantry area, just one shot after the other. Boom, boom, boom.
Oh my gosh.
And I walked up. It was definitely a moment where I felt God gave me 20 seconds of courage. And I walked up and I grabbed a cast iron pan out of the cupboard and I swung as hard as I could and I split the back of his head open. And he turned around and he said, "What then?" As he did that, I smacked him again in the forehead and split his forehead open. Still didn't knock him out. I'd fallen over the second time I'd swung. And I remember him standing up over me. He was bleeding down his face and he was yelling. My mom jumps up like Mama Bear, punches him 5-6 times in a row. There's blood splatting on the wall. I mean, crazy movie scene. Cops show up, take him to jail. My mom doesn't press charges. And I'm just blown away. I thought I was the hero in that moment. But it wasn't much longer after that they would actually kick me out with 3 months left of my freshman year of high school. So I went to stay with my buddy Forrest at his dad's house and slept on the hardwood floors. And Forrest and I would get up and we'd steal a cigarette out of his dad's pack and walk to school. And after my freshman year of high school, I'd moved back to live with my dad in Washington. My dad would rent a house for him and I, and he'd get me a bus pass so I could get around town and go to school. And he'd make sure there's $20 in a cup each week for me to go buy lunch during the school week, put Hunger Man meals in the freezer, serve milk in the house, made sure I had food. And then he'd go stay with his girlfriend. So I'd see my dad a couple times in passing each month. And so it gave me a lot of freedom to do whatever I wanted. So I was getting stoned before school, during lunch, after school, and I was taking acid, mushrooms, any drugs I could get my hands on and drinking quite a bit. And then when I was 18 years old, I got arrested for having a bong. I was drug paraphernalia and got a misdemeanor. I had to go stay the night in jail. It was the scariest moment ever. Black and white chain gang outfit on, bright orange slippers. The only thing I was allowed to bring in was a Bible. And I certainly wasn't walking with Jesus at the time, but I thought if I bring this Bible in, God will do two things. He'll forgive me and he'll keep me safe. And he did both of those things, but I didn't learn my lesson. I went right back to it after I got out of jail. And 2 weeks after I graduated high school, I woke up to a Post-it note on the bathroom mirror from my dad that said, "You can't comply with house rules. You have 48 hours to get out." And so between the ages of 18 and 21, I would move 21 times, living off of couches here, couches there, and living off of credit cards, couldn't hold a job. And one of those moves was to Seattle, Washington. And by the time I was 21 years old, I was $28,000 in debt, and I had to file bankruptcy. And so meanwhile, I'm still battling addictions. I landed a job with Universal Records, my dream job to work in the music business. I don't know how to play anything, but I was in the break room and I actually lied to get the job. I had to be in college. I had told them I was in college and, paid a bunch of money to get a college receipt that I was in college. Told them, "Oh yeah, I'm in college," and landed that job. But what that got me was 2 to 3 concerts a week and open tab. And I was living a rock star lifestyle without being a rock star. And then my 1-year anniversary came. I got laid off because of a thing called Napster. And then I remember that. Right. Yeah. It just killed the music industry. Working at Starbucks as a night manager after that. And I remember a girl walked in and she'd been in a few times, but she said, "Hey, we've got a college age event down at our church. Would you be interested in going?" And I was depressed. I had no friends and I was, she was good looking. So I said, "Hey, yeah, what time do I need to be there?" And so I went to that event, and I remember getting to that event and realizing that God had been protecting me my entire life. There was moments where I should have died of all the stupid things I'd done. And I'm 44 now. I've never had a stitch. I've never broken a bone. But I wasn't ready to give up my worldly lifestyle at that moment. But it was a month later. It was Easter 2004. I woke up after a night of partying in my buddy's basement. Half the guys that I partied with were still passed out on the floor. But I remember God saying, "Dude, you're going down a path that's going to end your life real quick if you don't start making some changes." And so in that moment, I gave my life to Christ right then and there. And I quit cold turkey, drugs, drinking, cigarettes, everything in that moment. And I called that girl up and I got her.
By yourself when that event happened? I mean,
I was by myself.
It wasn't other people kind of encouraging you. This was just between you and God.
Just me and God. Yeah, there was nobody there. It was just me and God. And I gave my life to Christ. And I called that girl up and I got her voicemail. And I said, "Hey, thanks for inviting me to church. Maybe I'll see you at the store sometime." And 11 months later, we were dating and we've been married for 19 years this year.
Oh my goodness. That is crazy.
Yeah. So
that one
God just kind
person
of
that,
planned everything out, man. It's been a wild journey, but it's been fun.
well, and hearing your story, what's so wild and unusual to me is going back to kind of that abusive situation,
Sure.
even that event of, hitting your stepfather over the head, you felt God in the midst, God directing some of these things, even though it doesn't sound like had any kind of relationship with him to speak of, or did you?
Correct. No, I mean, I knew of him because of my foundation of going to church, right? But I certainly wasn't spending time with Christ at the time. I certainly wasn't living I would say, a Christian lifestyle at all. And we weren't going to church. And, I didn't have any Christian friends at that time, but I've just always believed in God. And I have a grandma who's 90 years old, or will be 90 this month, or in June of this year. And she's been praying for me all of my life. And I truly believe that, her
Mm.
prayers worked to keep me safe. And I'm the second oldest of 19 first cousins that I have, and all of them, except for myself, I'll flip that. I'm the only one of them that are Christ followers, and I believe
Wow.
it's because of my grandma's prayers.
Yeah, I think when we will see how much of our lives were the result of someone's prayers that we may not have even been aware of. I think
Right.
of my scenario with my family in that we were twice a year church people, and three of us in my family, myself, my older brother, and my mom, all became Christians within 1 month of each other in three different locations, the three
Wow.
different sources, even though we didn't know a single person in all of our network who was a Christian. And within,
Wow.
a few years after that, the rest of the members of my family all became Christians. And there's this thing that just sticks in my head is, I wonder who was praying for us that we didn't know about for our family, that God would grab each one of us, all the members of our family, it just randomly, in a sense, kind of like your story, out of nowhere, uh, you know, draw us to Him. So I wonder about that's who is praying for us.
Yeah.
Maybe that's an encouragement, even as I think about it, for someone who is at their core someone who prays for others. That
Yeah.
there's a story that someone will tell one day, just like you're telling, that is at its beginning someone praying for them.
Yeah. Yeah. What amazing story you have there.
Yeah, well, likewise, that's amazing. So when you kind of described that, you felt God leading, would that have been words you would have used at the time of you felt like God was telling you to look down that hall?
I think it was God directing me down that, but more the Holy Spirit, right? Jumping in and
Yeah,
saying, "Hey, you got to take care of this," and that's a scary moment. A
yeah.
13-year-old, 14-year-old kid going up a grown man who's physically beating his mom, but I felt just that I had to go and take some action to stop it because I don't know where it would have ended had I not jumped in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even if not that night, some night down the road.
Right. Yep.
Wow, that is incredibly hard. So now you're 24 years old, right, with this brand newfound faith,
Mhm.
this new relationship that is beginning to form. In essence, it is about as much of a new life as anybody could describe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
tell us from there.
Yeah. So obviously, you know, what I had to do is I had to change the environment. And so I called up all my buddies that I'd been partying with and I'd known them for years. And I said, "Hey, for me, I got to take a break. I can't go out to the bars. I can't go out and party right now." And what I did was I replaced that environment with men that I found in the church that had great marriages. They were great entrepreneurs. They had great walks with Christ. And I would take them out to Starbucks. And this is pre-podcast days, but I would sit them down and I'd say, "Tell me about what you're doing right now in your life to have the life that you are, because that's what I want. How do I do that?" And they gave me books to read, and I spent time with them. And I was getting into men's Bible study, and I just replaced that party scene with sponging up as much as I could about replacing the pain and the grief and the, I would say, embarrassment of my previous life. Like, how do I replace that? Like the shame, right?
Right.
And I just started soaking up as much information as I could, spending as much time as I could with God. And I think that those early days were so important for me to just step away and get right into the word. And really ever since then, it's been an ongoing, daily, non-negotiable prayer time that I have. And I think that's what's helped me to be the person that I am today. But I had to change the environment. I think if we're struggling with things and we want to make a change, we can't continue to stay in that environment at first because we're weak mentally trying to step away from that. People try to quit cigarettes for many, many years. Oh, I quit for one day, right? And then something happens, right? I had to replace that environment with something that I knew was strong. I knew these men from the church and they had great walks with Christ. And I said, man, I want to understand, what do I need to do? And
But
through
was that
their
an,
guidance, it helped me get on the right path.
yeah, was that an intentional strategy, or is that just because you are really hungry for new things?
It was both. One very
Okay.
intentional. I sought men out in the church through going to church, and my wife was actually in the process of getting licensed as a youth pastor at the church that we went to at the time. So she introduced me
Mm.
to a lot of other men, and I just said, "Hey, man, I want to spend time with you, and I want to understand you, and understand what I need to do to grow in my faith." And it was huge, and it was in those conversations that I realized that my past and other people's opinions of me didn't define my future. And when I did that, that's when I could step into my purpose and start making an impact by sharing my story.
Yeah, I'd love for you to kind of say that again, because those are incredibly powerful words. Your past didn't define your future. So say that one more time. In terms of
Yeah,
that
our
your
past and other people's opinions of me, right, does not define my future. And
yeah,
once I realize that, I can step into my purpose and I can start making an impact by sharing my story and encouraging others that they don't have to be that victim mentality. They can make a
yeah.
change in their life whenever they decide to. They just have to step into that, take action, surround themselves with the right people. And man, that's where I think if we're following God, that's when things start to come into play.
Right. And I think that too often people believe that their past uh, does create tremendous limits, and
For
people's
sure.
opinions do matter in terms of the possibility and the potential of who they can become. And,
Yeah.
of course, from where you'd come from, if you had believed that, you would have never gotten out of the pit.
I did for a long time. I never thought I would make it to age 40. I just thought I was going
Mm.
to live the life of a rock star and go down partying. And, I never had future expectations or, 10-year goals or any of that. Like I just was like, I'm living life today. And, when I'm dying, I'm dead, and, I'm so thankful for God and shining that light on, the right path and getting aligned with him. And, I wouldn't be here today without Jesus and stepping in and prayers for, for my grandma and other people that I didn't even know.
Yeah, and yeah, that's absolutely true, and that is coupled with the actions that you've taken. The steps, the intentionality of getting with people, of changing your environment, of certain practices. So I would love to also kind of dive deeply into that, because I think that so many people are stuck in their lives, and at the core, they don't know the way out of it.
Mhm.
And they don't know, does it just hit you? Does it, is it just kind of magical that all of a sudden you wake up one morning and you have motivation? How do you become unstuck in life? And you're now on a 20-year path of
Mhm.
this growth. So this isn't just like, man, I've been doing this for a whole year and I lost 50 pounds and look how
Yeah.
well I'm doing. And it's been a year now. This is 20 years. So I think your words have weight.
Yeah. It really is. Sometimes it can happen where it's just a cold turkey change, but a
Yeah.
lot of times it does take some struggle and some fight to fight for what you want. Right. And I
Right.
think if we are stuck, we've got to figure out how to change that. And how do we change that? We go and surround ourselves with people that are living the life that we want to live. And maybe they're church people, or maybe they're entrepreneurs, or maybe there's, somebody that you work with that's doing good and you want to follow them, right? Start stepping out of your comfort zone and
Yeah.
asking them, be intentional about meeting with them on a regular basis. Maybe it's once a month, maybe it's once every 2 months, maybe it's once a week, whatever works best for you. But I think if you can get uncomfortable, stepping out of your comfort zone, going, finding people that are living the life that you want, and being intentional about meeting with them, finding out what they're doing to live the life that they are, and then go and do those things. Too many people get stuck and then they don't want to step into what they're really called to do because they don't know how, or they don't know who to talk to. Man, there's so many local meetups. You can go to somebody at your church, right? Go find men's groups, women's groups, whatever that is for you. But there's an option for you if you feel stuck. You just have to take action and get a little uncomfortable at first.
Yeah, I agree. And I think don't get stuck in the place where you feel like you have to get it right to get started.
Totally.
Take that first step. If you can just push through to that first step. That first step is the uncomfortable one. It's putting your leg out over the edge of the boat. That's what's so really uncomfortable. From there, you can start to sail a little bit, but you got, courage is in that first step, even when you don't know how it will turn out. If that person's going to think you're weird for having asked them out, or you don't know, it's that uncertainty, but the courage to take just that first step.
Huge. I think if we can, one, have this attitude of gratitude always. And I'm just so thankful every day. For me, it's a goal of mine to wake up every day. And so if I wake up, if I open my eyes immediately out loud, right there in bed, man, thank you, Jesus, for another day to see and hug and hold my family. Now I got to whisper so my wife doesn't reach over and, smack me because I woke her up. But I immediately out loud say that. And then it's another goal of mine to make my bed. So I get up out of bed and I make my bed. So there's 2 wins in 15 seconds. My brain is already firing off. We've already accomplished 2 goals. It's going to be a dang good day. And then for me, it's coming upstairs and that non-negotiable is spending time in prayer. Kick on some worship music and go right into prayer. And my prayers are very gratitude driven. I'm so thankful for this life and my wife, my kids. We're debt free. Like we are so thankful for the life that we live. And that non-negotiable prayer time for me, that could last 10 minutes. That could last 30 minutes. It really kind of depends on the day, but that's a non-negotiable for me to start my day exactly like that. And that sets the tone for the whole day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. So let's continue to kind of get tactical with this.
Sure.
To me, one of the huge takeaways you talk about is just the importance of changing our environment.
Yeah.
For us to Lone Ranger it with all of the forces of negative people or negative impacts, negative previous habits coming at us, we're just frankly not that strong. We need to change our environment. So that's a great one. So give us a few other practices, rituals, habits that have really helped you sustain over the long haul. So you have this core fundamental practice of, first thing in the morning, the gratitude, make your bed, and this time with God, prayer.
Yeah.
So tell us more. What are some other things that have really made a difference for you?
For me, it's one, again, having those people in my life that I can call my friends that are Christ followers, because that's what I want to be around. And so I found people in the church, men especially, that have maybe a Thursday morning Bible study, right? I like to get up early so I can go and spend that hour a week with them, where it's not just a Sunday, which I love Sunday church, but it's just men connected with other men. Iron sharpens iron, right?
Yep.
And that, I love being a part of a small group or a Bible study with other men that are going to open up about their struggles and probably struggles that I'm related with, right? And I might be able to help somebody else that's maybe earlier on in their stage that I happen to get through. And there's people that are older than me that I'm going through, and I'm like, man, I wish I knew how to do this. And boom, they're right there. God provides if we take that action, right? And so, number one, for me, getting into a men's Bible study, I also connect with, a couple men a week. I have a favorite coffee place here in town that I go to, and I just say, hey man, let's go spend an hour and let's just catch up. And let me see how I can pray for you. Let me see how I can help you, right? And I think surrounding ourselves with those people that we want to live a life with, but also being intentional about it. Because I think we can get busy, we can get caught up in life, and that draws us away from God and connecting with other men. But if we can be intentional and put it on our calendar, like, man, I need to reach out to Joe today. I need to reach out to Bob today, right? Do that on your calendar. That's what I do. I use an app called Asana, and I have this to-do list.
Yep.
And these are the men that I want to reach out to. And I want to reach out to one a day, right? Just shoot them a quick, encouraging video message. Man, you're doing awesome. If I can help you out with anything, right? Surrounding ourselves with people that are living the life that we want. And I also think we can fill our minds with great podcasts, motivational videos. We can spend time in the Word, right? That type of stuff will allow us to get to that level in life that we want to be around. But again, it's so important, so key to surround yourself with people that are living the life that you want.
I get it. It all kind of comes back to this environment, the environment of the people,
Yeah,
in
totally.
your life, environment of inputs in your life. So, so that's great. And you can do that while having a full, consuming job and everything else. You're talking about a few hours a week to give to what's really, really important. So what are, I think it'd just be fun for people to hear a couple of podcasts other than your own and mine that have been really meaningful to you, and maybe a couple of books that have been real impactful for you.
Yeah, love this. So a friend of mine named Kelly Cardenas, he has the Kelly Cardenas Show podcast. God just is so good, man, in lining people up. And, I met him through a podcast, and then him and I have become great friends, and we've met up a couple times over the last 4 years. But he has an amazing podcast, and he's an awesome dad, awesome man of faith. And he's just been the last set of series he's been doing on his podcast is he's been going through each proverb and talking about how it relates today, 3,000-year-old wisdom, and how it relates to us today. And so really cool podcast. I like listening to that. Another one by the name of Dad Up. It's the Dad Up Show. A guy named Brian Ward is the host of that. Also a man of faith, and talks about parenting as from a man's perspective. How can we be better parents? How can we be better husbands to our wives? And just two podcasts there that I love to listen to. Craig Rochelle's podcast. I love listening to that, right? Like a big fan of Craig's. And those three podcasts are huge. I think for me, the books that have made the most impact on me over the years, and one that I always go back to, is by Mark Batterson, In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day.
Yeah.
And he followed that up with a book called Chase the Lion. And man, those two books had just a massive impact on me and my journey and where I'm at today. And so I think those are two books that I would highly, highly recommend that we go and check out.
Well, I can totally see how Mark Batterson would be a kindred spirit with you, in your walk. And those are really good books. So the first podcast you mentioned, I want to make sure I get this in the share. Kelly Cardenas.
Yeah, so it's a Cardenas, Kelly Cardenas. It's the Kelly Cardenas Show.
Okay. All right, I'm going to put these in the show notes for anybody who's listening who wants a couple of other resources. Podcasts are really tremendous places and opportunities to grow. And I'm a huge reader myself. Now, it's a way of being mentored in a sense without necessarily having to find someone face to face and setting aside their time. It's a tremendous benefit of technology these days, when technology has so many downsides, in terms of it. So, those are great. maybe you've kind of hit on this, but if you were coaching someone and they came to you and said, look, I'm really stuck where I am now. What's the first thing that I should do? Is there a first thing that you would just point them to and say, okay, let's just start right here?
First thing I would say is let's pray, and let's just put this on the table right now. Let's just put it at God's feet and let Him take control. But one, let's pray about it. But number two, I would ask the deeper question, like, what are you struggling with, right? Are you struggling with being a better dad, being a better husband or employer, right? I've had a lot of experience in work, and I can help somebody with resumes, and I can help them network and build relationships and things like that. If they're struggling as being a dad, yeah, I've gone through that. I've made a lot of mistakes as a dad, but I think as dads, we got to own up to those mistakes. And when I yell at my kid when I shouldn't have, or if I said something to my wife I shouldn't have, I got to own up to that, and I got to go apologize and say that. So maybe I can help them in that area. I also want to ask them, like, of the area that you're struggling with, if I can't help you, I'm going to find a resource that can, because I know a lot of people that are there, and maybe it's somebody from the church, maybe it's somebody that is not even in the city that I live in, but I can connect you with somebody that maybe has gone through that same sort of thing. But I think the number one thing is we pray and we figure out exactly what is it that you're struggling with. And if we can go back to the why, like, why are we making changes in our life? Why are we struggling? I don't know if we can answer the why of the struggling, but we can answer what is our why to get through the struggle, right? Are we trying to be that better dad? Are we trying to draw closer with God? And if we can figure out that, what's the why, the end goal, then we can start working backwards and going, okay, if we want to get there, then we've got to figure out some things here.
Yeah, that's great. And just throw in that, that advice, which I love, that to pray. That's accessible to all of us. I know there's some people will say, well, that's fine for those Christian people out there, and that's fine for those people, that have got their act together and faith. But wherever we are, no matter how weird or strange it might feel, it's still something. It might be that first step that we talked about earlier of that, getting into that uncomfortable place, might be praying when you've either never prayed or it's been a long, long time. It's still a great step. So I love that. And then I love the second thing too. We talk a lot about it on this podcast of trying to name with clarity that stuck place, and when we name things, there's power behind naming things. And sometimes we just haven't done the work of drilling down with clarity to name that place that we're stuck in. And that's really helpful. So those are great places for just about anybody in terms of things. So, well, this is really great. I'd love any just last thoughts that you might have in terms of what you're seeing and where your heart is going these days. And then also I want to kind of give people an opportunity to connect with you and places they might connect.
Yeah. So I've had my podcast since 2019, the current Erik Allen Show, and episode 260 will drop here shortly. But for me, I've always focused on entrepreneurs, world changers, and success-minded people. I've had men of faith, women of faith. I've had people who are non-believers on the show because I was interested in their stories. But I think over the past few months, God's been working on my heart a little bit to change that perspective. One, probably because I'm 44, and there's probably other men that are around my age that are struggling with this. But I'm going to shift the focus. I'm going to start talking with men of faith, Christian faith, that are, and how do we figure out like the balance of following Jesus and being a dad and being a husband and maybe paying the bills and running a business, right? That type of stuff. We're going to answer those questions on my podcast. And for me being a first generational Christian, like how do I raise second generation Christians where they didn't go through the adversity? How can we build that foundation with my kids? And my wife does an amazing job. She homeschools the kids, and the first hour and a half of the day is them just studying the Bible. And it's so cool when I go downstairs to get coffee and I see them praying and worshiping together. You know, and I wish that I could be part of that. Obviously, I'm working, but I love that my wife is the one that's building that foundation right now in our kids. And so, yeah, I enjoy that, and so, man, it's so much fun to be a part of this.
Well, that is an amazing mission, because I think that men are often in a kind of a lost place, figuring out
Yeah,
no manual on how to be a dad, no manual
yeah,
really on how to be a man these days. In fact, a lot of very conflicting communication out there.
yeah,
So, having some good, real conversations, and at the critical kind of transition stage of life that you're in now, over the next 15 years, I've seen that transition for men from, mid 40s to 60 is a really uncomfortable place as they deal with, what's my relevance now as I move into a second season. So, wow, so many good
yeah,
things. You've got a
yeah.
great journey ahead of you. Thanks so much, Erik. There's so much good in this, and I know people are going to really enjoy your podcast. I will say, just so that people get it right, it's Erik with a K, not Erik with a C, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the
that's
Erik
correct. Yep.
Allen show, and I'm looking forward to connecting in with that. And thank you so much for sharing your story and your journey and your inspiration of, moving forward with incredible practicality. It's going to be something valuable for men and women who are listening at all stages of life. So thank you so much for being a part of Space for Life.
Oh, thank you, man. It's truly been an honor to be on your show, man. This is, I've done well over 200 interviews probably since I started podcasting. I got to tell you, this is one of my favorite shows to be on. So thank you so much for having me on. It's truly an honor, man.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Looking forward to staying connected. Thanks. Thanks, everybody, for listening. You're going to want to share this episode widely and connect in with Erik. And I think from both of our hearts, more than anything, we just love to see people put some of these things into practice, to intentionally change and form your environment, and to practice some of these things this early morning time and meeting with other men and women that can help you grow and that you can help grow. So I hope it's just an inspiration for everybody to live a life of intentionality and purpose and gratitude. I love that. So thanks so much, everybody. Share it broadly, and we look forward to seeing you next week.